Hi, everyone, and welcome to Yoga Biz Studio, a bi-weekly internet show of 10 to 30 minutes in length, hosted by me, Carla Wilson, owner of Wilson Media Services, and also by my colleague,
Keeley Mitchell, principal at Z Living.
Each episode, we like to share our business, legal, and marketing expertise with yoga studio owners and independent yoga teachers. For our Yoga Biz Studio webcast, we use Google Plus Hangouts on Air. This gives us some flexibility in how we allow people to view our show. So you're either watching our show via our website at yogabizstudio.com, on the Google Plus event page for today's show, or via YouTube. Our Google Plus event page has a Q&A panel below the video player on which you can enter questions or comments. We would love to hear from you. We can monitor that during the show. If you're watching via YouTube, please know that you can click on the little yellow graphic at the bottom of the video player, and that will navigate you over to our Google Plus page. We would love to converse with you during the show. Before we dive into today's topic of information overload and how to avoid it, I wanted to invite you to visit our website. Again, that address is yogabizstudio.com, or our YouTube channel, and view a new studio visit that we recently had with Laura Liss of the Center Health Yoga Arts in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, and their Yoga Power and Light studio. Remember that we are on the hunt to visit local studios and would love to feature yours. So if you are interested, please feel free to email us at yogabizstudio@gmail.com. Keeley, why don't you give us an introduction to our discussion on information overload?
Gladly. Thank you, Carla. Okay, so Carla and I have had countless discussions about this topic. We both continually struggle with this issue because we want to stay informed on the latest in our field, so we feel compelled to sign up for newsletters and kind of visit all these different social media outlets to gather information. But often it just results in anxiety attacks, at least for me, because I can't keep up with it all. So we're going to address how to manage information overload, and when it comes to managing all the emails you receive, knowing when to bog down, and like when you're trying to get all this information, you're getting bogged down, learning different things to run a business. How do you handle all of this? Because oftentimes, at least it happens to me I guess I should say once a quarter, I start trying to go on collecting all this information on how to run a business and, making sure I'm running my business effectively and I'm reaching out to people and I'm doing all these right things correctly. And then you kind of get stuck in a little hole and you're not actually doing the business. So we understand this happens to you, email overload, social media overload, information of learning how to run your business to help you run it better overload. So we want to help you out with all of these things so that you can get through it all. So let's start with reducing information intake. And mostly what I'm focusing in on is when you wake up in the morning and there's like 100 emails in your inbox. How do you handle this? I definitely feel this so applies to me because I can be an information hoarder to an extent. I love learning.
Me too,
I love
me
learning
too.
new things. So like I get all this stuff and I swear I'm going to read all this email that comes into my inbox. And I want to collect information everywhere so I can better serve my clients and, of course, you viewers as well, that I end up sometimes feeling like I'm buried under information and completely overwhelmed. If you're like me in this respect, then here are 4 tips to help you reduce information intake. And these are good because when you start to feel overwhelmed, like when I start to fall back into hoarding information, I go through these steps and it helps me like get back on track and feel better. So number 1, cut down on the amount of information you take in. Realistically, how much information can you really read in a day, a week, or a month? If you're feeling overwhelmed, then you're trying to read too much in a limited period of time. So try filtering out your sources. Which source provides the best information? What websites do you like receiving information from? Starting with these questions will help you move forward to decluttering your information closet, as I like to say. So number 2, limit the number of newsletters you're on. If you keep receiving a newsletter from a source and you never read it, then it's time to unsubscribe. This is a practice I started doing myself. I realized I would visit so many websites and then sign up for their newsletters because I wanted to kind of get their information and keep up to date with what they were talking about. And then I become overloaded with these newsletters that I never read. But I hold on to them for months because I swear I am going to read them. So finally I came to terms with reality and realized that I do not consistently read it. If I do not consistently read a newsletter, then I need to unsubscribe. Pretty much out of sight, out of mind. No anxiety and pressure to read newsletters piling up in your inbox. Number 3, focus on specific topics. You can't keep up with everything, so decide what topics are a priority to you and then keep up with those. The less topics you try to cover, the less likely you're going to be becoming overwhelmed. And the 4th tip is set specific times to check your email. I generally check my email in the morning and in the evening. And then in the middle of the day, I kind of focus on other stuff. I designated these times because checking in the morning allows me to kind of get into the groove of work. It's kind of my, I don't drink coffee, but it's kind of my coffee. I sit down, I check email, and I slowly say, okay, I'm ready to start the day. And in the evenings, it allows me to catch anything needing to be addressed before the day's ended. So if there was a true emergency or someone needed an answer before the day was over, by checking in the evening, I'm able to respond to those emails. Following this rule of thumb has allowed me to discern which emails were a priority over others and whether I wanted to read them at all, because I'm designating a block of time that I can solely focus on my emails. When I go through them, I can look at it and say, this isn't something I want to read, this is something I need to read, and kind of go through that way, save those for reading later. So now I know some of you are cringing at the idea of ignoring your email throughout the entire day. I used to too, because I thought, oh my God, what if something happens, some emergency, and I'm not checking my email? What if you are missing something, whatever it is? Well, I am able to cheat around this little regimen by checking my emails that come through on my cell phone when I'm standing in line and have nothing else to do but wait. So that's how I get around it. So if I'm at the doctor's waiting room, like I was this morning, or pretty much any place where I'm held captive and waiting, I will use this time to cheat. And I figure out that's a great way. I can't do any other work. I'm standing in line. I can then go and respond to some emails, and I feel a little bit more peace of mind. All right, so those are 4 tips for managing the information overload that we encounter with our email. I will now hand it over to Carla, who will discuss information overload from social media.
Excellent. Keeley, as usual, thank you. Those are really good tips that I think are easily implementable for people, and I think will be helpful so that, like you, I feel like I'm an information hoarder too. Amen.
Yep.
And then, just like you said, suddenly you're working in your business and not on your business when you are just taking in too much of that information. So the part that I wanted to cover was really keeping up with aspect of information during each day. As we found in an article that was an article on a website called Teach Thought. We will have a link in the show notes for you. There are a couple of great strategies for organizing your streams of information that you're absorbing, so you're absorbing it efficiently and still keeping your productivity level pretty high. So the first thing is, if you're a blog reader, always set up an RSS reader. This is RSS stands for Real Simple Syndication, and this is how blogs aggregate out their content. So when you subscribe to an RSS feed, you are notified when new content is published, when new content has been published by that publisher, by that source. And while you do have the option of being notified by email when this happens, here we are trying to avoid information overload in email, what I suggest to use instead is an RSS reader. So what you can do is it allows you to subscribe to the blogs you like to follow. It brings all of the blogs and the new content into one area, and you can quickly scan the headlines, and then decide which article you're going to open and absorb. And then you're also not, digging down in the details, just trying to get through the information. You're actually organizing it in one place together. So first, start using a blog reader that will capture these new posts by your favorite online publishers. I use a RSS reader called Feedly, which basically was the alternative to Google Reader when Google took Google Reader away about a year ago. There's also a few others. One is called NewsBlur, NewsVibe, and then there's several other RSS readers you can consider as well. For me, Feedly is the way to go. I think it's just an easy way to bring, again, all the blogs into one area. It brings all that content together. You can read through the headlines and say, oh, this, as Keeley's suggestion said, this is the area of information that I really want to concentrate on, or this is information that deals with the goals for my business. That's going to be the deciding factor whether I open and read that blog post or not. So let's move on to tip number 2 in this keeping up with information, and that is to utilize your preferred social networks. Part of managing information overload is understanding how you prefer to absorb content. So if you feel too overwhelmed by your email inbox, then start unsubscribing to email newsletters that aren't specific to your goals, and start following the business coach or mentor or whoever this publisher is. Start following them on a social channel instead. Maybe you'd rather watch somebody's content, so in that case, forget the email newsletter and start following their YouTube channel. Or if you'd rather listen, start subscribing via an iTunes podcast. If you're a reader but you don't want to be reading via email, then start following your favorite folks on Google Plus or Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. As you know, when you log into LinkedIn, LinkedIn has LinkedIn Today, which is like the main trending things that are happening. That's one way to bring information in one page to kind of help you, again, organize it in one place and decide which pieces of information you're going to absorb and which you're going to ignore for the day. So here's a bonus tip, and that is to utilize the list features in some of your social networks. I'm talking specifically about Facebook and Twitter. You might not be aware of this, but each of them offers lists for you to create. So I use actually a third-party social media management tool called Hootsuite, which helps me to organize lists within my Twitter profile. So you can, organize people by, again, by whatever topic you're really looking for. If it's, I actually have lists of people who are local to me. I have people that produce podcasts as a stream of folks that I follow, and then other online marketers. And those are my Twitter lists. And then on Facebook, again, this is kind of similar to the RSS reader for the blogs. You can, by organizing these people into lists, it's really going to take the overwhelm out of this. So in Facebook, I have lists of my yogini and yogi friends. I have, a family-specific list. I have business connection-specific lists. And then that way, when I'm in Facebook, which it's an ADD person's worst nightmare on some levels, it's much easier to have, it makes it easier. It's organized for you the way you like to absorb the content, and it's right there for you. And then, so you can still feel up to date, but you're not feeling overwhelmed. Hey, Keeley, what else did you want to share, or shall I say, shall we vent about a little bit further?
Well, Carla, as always, when you talk about social media and all that, I always learn so much. So thank you. Great information. So yeah, I do have one other issue with the information overload that I have personally suffered from. I feel like I'm in like a confession, or like, I guess, a group, like, my name is Keeley and I had this issue. But when I started my business, I wanted to learn as much as I could. And I visited all these sites about starting your business and listened to countless webinars and seminars about the right process for selling yourself and getting new clients. You name it, I have probably seen and heard it. and all the big name people that are out here that are running these webinars. But however, over time, I realized that I was doing more watching and reading of this stuff, and it wasn't helping. It was actually preventing me from moving forward with my business. Well, I should say moving forward, it was confusing me on what was the best way to run my business because I had all these different points of view coming at me. And then, of course, I was becoming overwhelmed. I had to take a step back and breathe and remember what was my own unique style and embrace that. And knowing that allowed me to kind of weed out those experts' styles that just didn't flow with mine. When you're learning others' techniques, you can't lose yourself and what makes you unique. You also need to remember your target audience, and so no matter what some expert says, you need to make sure your target audience will respond favorably and to your marketing tactics. So my experience taught me was, one, listen to yourself, and two, like at some point you got to just stop listening because you can spend forever listening to all these different experts, and you have to make sure what you're learning actually sits well with you. Carla and I had this discussion, like we've listened to different people out there, and while they're great, we're not knocking them, they just don't work for us and our style. So if we were to try and implement what they were saying as to how you run your business, I don't think it will come across genuine with us because we wouldn't feel comfortable. So keep that in mind when you're actually learning, going to all these different webinars and getting lessons on how to run your business and what you're supposed to do. Just make sure that do a check within that it sits well with you. And it's okay if it doesn't. You just weed that out and move on. Or, as Carla and I discussed, we take bits and pieces from different people and combine it into what makes us unique and what we do. So lastly, I just want to say there comes a time when you need to stop learning and take action. And remember, there is a lot to be learned from doing. Actually, there's tremendous value in it because you can learn constantly all day, but not until when you actually go out and do it do your true lessons begin. So we just wanted to, that was my last lesson of the day, or my last vent, as Carla said. It's just information overload. Just stop watching webinars for a while and get out there.
Exactly. So I think that these, I guess there's 7 or 8 tips by now that we've shared, would be our takeaway topic for you this week, is to go back, look through these quick tips, find out what makes sense to you, and then start implementing that in your information overload organizing effort so that you're not overwhelmed by information and you can focus on the stuff that's important to you running your business. So as usual, Keeley, thanks for your insights too, because they're really helpful.
Thank you.
So we want to help our viewers avoid information overload, but we also want them to run successful businesses and stay true to themselves. So retain the information that makes sense and let go of the stuff that doesn't make sense. I think that's the easiest way to say it.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. So for our next episode, we'll be broadcasting at a special time, I should say, because we will have a special guest. Brittany Walrath of Brittany Ray Yoga will be with us. She will be, I know, exciting, right? So Brittany will be helping us with goal setting, which I think is, again, of course this is something we talk about at the beginning of the year, but here we are, we're at the second half of 2014 already. How crazy is that? And maybe it's time for you to either review the goals you've set, or maybe you never set them, and it's time to really concentrate and set some goals for the second half of the year. So tell your friends, and we will see you here on Thursday, July 24th. That day we will be broadcasting at 7 p.m., live streaming at 7 p.m., but as usual, you will be able to see that video after the fact if you're not able to make it to our show live. So in the meantime, please feel free to message us with your questions or your show ideas. Our email address is yogabizstudio@gmail.com. Our website is yogabizstudio.com, and you can find us on social networks of Google+, Facebook, and Twitter at YogaBizStudio.
Thanks, Carla. And thank you, our audience, for joining us today. Our Yoga Biz Studio show is brought to you weekly by me, Keeley Mitchell of Z Living, and Carla Wilson of Wilson Media Services. Until, July 24th.
Yes.
At 7 p.m. At 7 p.m. everyone. Namaste.
Namaste, everyone.